Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Heavy Branches. I'm Jacob, and I'm here with my two best friends, Tanner and Jacob Cave, and we're excited to get into this week's episode with you guys today. But before we do that, Tanner, how you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a slow and strange week for me because I'm getting ready to be gone for a couple weeks. Trying to spend time with my family as much as possible and still get a little work done as much as possible as well. But pretty good, and had a good week last week being able to go to the rally. How are you guys doing, Gabe?
I'm doing excellent. The rally was awesome. I thank everyone that was there and that got to see us and talk to us. It was a really great time of fellowship. Um, got to hear some great preaching. Got to hang out with you guys. So overall, I think I told Meg or Saturday when we got home. I said I am physically exhausted, but emotionally and spiritually ready to go. So that's exactly how I felt. And so yeah, it was a good week. I am finished my sermon series on Romans chapter 8 called Victory in Jesus Sunday, which is really exciting. And then I am starting this week on not this week, but the week after on Leviticus. So I've been reading a lot in Leviticus, which is fun. So yeah, I'm doing good. How about you, Jacob?
Been doing good. I echo everything you guys said about the rally, how great of a time that was for all of us. So I hope some of you guys that are listening were able to make it out and enjoy that as well. So that was pretty much my week. So I don't have a whole lot else to add.
Well, speaking of the rally, our icebreaker for today is about the rally, and I just had a few questions, and I'll answer these too. This isn't just for you guys, but
Yeah, we're
um,
not letting you ask the questions anymore without having to answer yourself.
oh no, it'll happen again.
You're getting
It'll happen again. But what was your favorite sermon from the rally?
Hmm.
Well, I'll go first if you don't mind, Jacob.
Okay, go ahead.
I hands down one of the best sermons I've heard in a long time. It's one of those that made me. I literally cried, which I don't normally do, and just full of conviction and emotion. It was Dr. Peer when he preached on this idea of denying Jesus on Peter and his life, and looking at that rooster, and
Barbecue the rooster.
yeah, barbecue that rooster. And man, just I know that he's your grandpa Tanner, but like his heart and like emotion and just you can see the conviction in his voice and see it on his face. And I don't know, there's just something about it. And so that would definitely be my favorite. I have a top probably 3 to 5 to 6. I have a ton that I really like. But that was the one that I took away that was like, oh man, it really hit me in the heart.
Yeah.
Historically, just in my experience, this is my third year at the rally and third year of going to family camps, Hillsboro, the rally, the spring clinic, whatnot. And just historically over the last 3 years, I feel like the Southern Indiana Family Rally has had just top notch, some of the best preaching out of all of the events. Different events have their different strengths and things going for them, and I feel like at least over the last 3 years, from my perspective, the rally has had excellent preaching, and the same of that was true this year. Outside of probably three knuckleheads that went up there and tried to preach, but you'll know who I'm talking about if you were there. They may or may not be represented here by Heavy Branches, but
They tried. They did.
favorite sermon. I set it up like that because all of them were really good, and I don't just say that. I've been known to be a critic of sermons, as Tanner and Jacob and myself all send around sermons that we preach and help each other critique each other to get better. So I don't say that lightly. I'd really enjoyed all of the sermons, but I think if I had to pick my favorite, I would go with the sermon that Derek Baker preached from the book of Daniel, mainly the first couple of chapters. Just a call that Daniel made up his mind, right? That he was going to live a holy life and stand up for what God has called him to do, and really gave me a lot of ideas about preaching through the book of Daniel and really challenged me in areas where I need to put my foot down more and make up my mind that I'm going to do what's right. So I really enjoyed that one. That'd be my favorite.
Yeah, I agree too. There wasn't a bad sermon except for maybe ours. This is kind of hard because Aaron Davis, both of his messages were exceptional, and he always does a great job. But this week, both of his really were really good. But I'm with Cabe. I think my grandpa's was my favorite. He just finds a way to make things so personal. And I genuinely don't know of any other preacher that can make the scriptures relate as well as he does. And there are preachers that do a good job of it, but he finds a way to do it every time. And I didn't cry like Cabe did, but it was exceptional, and I very much appreciated it. So that's my top pick. Did you guys have any other highlights from the rally?
Oh, I think what they're doing at the teens is something that it's not talked about too much. But Kurt and his team are doing awesome with the kids during the rally, and I think they did an amazing time. I know me and Jacob, both. Whew, excuse me. um,
Let's see if we can cut that out. Oh my!
no, we'll
No,
get.
I'm leaving it in.
You just destroyed somebody's car speakers. If they're
Me and Jacob, we both helped with the teen stuff. We both preached a sermon, but it was really awesome to be able to spend a little time with the kids out there. But yeah, the fellowship is some of the best. I really enjoyed seeing some of our friends and things like that. And this was my wife's first time ever going, so she got to meet everybody, and which is really cool. So.
Yeah, as far as a highlight goes, I echo what Cabe said. Really enjoyed getting to be out there with the teens, spend some time with them, and so thankful for Kirk for giving me the opportunity to preach for him.
Yeah.
Always really love getting to do that and invest in the teenagers. So that was good. Just the fellowship overall, I would say, um, it was a strength for me going out, and whether if it was the meals at the church, which were excellent, or going out in Madison and eating different places. Madison has a lot of different food variety that's really good. And so just getting to catch up with ministry friends, Bible college friends, um, other preachers is always really important for me and really special in times that I cherish. So that'd be my highlight outside of the preaching part of it.
I think my highlight has to do with just how they set the rally up. They when they call it the Southern Indiana Family Rally, they really emphasize the family aspect of that, in that they try to make sure that every age has something. And that was really great for me and Kinsey, because they made sure that the nursery was staffed the whole week, and so you know, we could go and listen to the sermons and have our own time to grow in worship, and Willow was taken care of, and I really appreciated that, and that was a highlight for me.
And I forgot, probably the most important highlight is I got to meet Willow for the first time in person, and that was wonderful. Tanner, you got a great family, and she's great. It was
I
really
appreciate that.
awesome.
All right, so we did preach a 3-part sermon, the three of us. The first part of this is, would you do it again? And
Like,
this is simply asking, would you preach with the other two people
oh,
on this
with
podcast
you
again?
hooligans? Like,
Yeah.
are you talking about like a 3-person sermon or like a tag
Yes.
team sermon or nah? I'm just kidding. No, I would preach with you all again. You guys, it was we got to spend some time together.
It was enjoyable. It was a challenge. Just to be quite honest, just because if anyone listening have heard any of us preach, we all have very different styles, both in delivery and in content. And neither of them are none of them are wrong or bad, just very different stylistically. And so that kind of made it an additional challenge, I think, because we didn't want it to seem like we had three mini sermons that were all different and had their own ideas and their own set of scripture verses. We really wanted it to be like a normal sermon, right? That has your main passage of scripture and your coherent thought through it all, so that it flowed well and didn't seem like little mini sermonettes, if you will. So it was challenging, but what I would do it again. It was fun getting to preach with two of my best friends. So yeah.
I'm the same. I would do it again. The last part of this is, would you want to be a little create, not more creative, but creative in a different way, and maybe try and preach it differently the next time, or
So
write it differently and then preach it differently?
so one idea we talked about, and Cabe, I think you were the one that brought this up, was so the way we did it, right? We have the 40-minute time slot, and so we all had our own chunk of 10 to 13-ish minutes where Jacob Cabe did the first chunk, Tanner did the middle chunk, and I closed us out. And that's one way to do it. Another way that Cabe brought up is doing it almost like a conversation, where like instead of each of us having the one section, maybe I talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and then Cabe for 2 or 3, and Tanner for 2 or 3, and we do that transition a bunch more than just a couple times through the sermon. I don't know how that would work. I don't know how. What I mean is, I don't know how well I would be able to pull that off. Maybe it would feel more like the podcast in that sense. Maybe not. I don't know. I felt like the way we did it, for me, speaking for myself, was what I was most comfortable with. I wouldn't be opposed to attempting something new, but so that's my thoughts on it. What do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I like how we did it. I think one thing that we focused on is our strengths, and like so we put the people that we thought strengths with certain things, and I think for us to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation is why we did it the way we did it. And I think it went over the way that we wanted to, or at least for me. But with a conversation, I think I would love to try it if it's if you guys would, if we ever get the opportunity or with anybody. I think it'd be super cool because like it would be this idea of one person would talk and maybe give an illustration or talk about a passage, or then the next person, what that reminds me of this in my life. And I think that would be like just us talking. And I know that would be different than like a sermon that we're normally preaching, but I think it would be cool to maybe bring out, challenge ourselves a little bit. So yeah, I would definitely try something different if we ever get an opportunity. Because yeah.
Yeah, part of me would be worried it wouldn't seem like a sermon, like it would just kind of seem more like a Bible conversation. Maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know. It would be so different. I have a hard time seeing in my mind how that would play out.
I'm glad we did it this way this time, because I think we were all comfortable with it. The next time, I do think I would like to try the conversation. But here's the thing: for it to be good and effective, we would have to memorize our parts.
That's another thing I thought is like, because we all three, correct me if I'm wrong, preach manuscript.
Yeah.
So we all have, if not every word, just about every word we're going to say while we're preaching on our notes, and that would look really weird, I think, if it's like a conversational style sermon, but we're also preaching from manuscripted notes. So I forgot to mention that, Tanner, but I had that same thought of we would have to either use a brief outline that we can kind of hide in our Bible, maybe, or have no notes, which would be totally way out of my comfort zone. I know some preachers get up and do it with no notes. I would fall apart. I mean, it would be terrible.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that was my icebreaker. I just wanted to ask you guys a little bit about the rally. So
Well, I know. I just want to end it with this. I just am so appreciative we're so humbled to even get the opportunity to preach at such a great event like that. I know when we were told, we were like, "You sure?" Like,
Really scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
yeah, yeah.
I was
But
thinking.
like, it's a big deal to be able to preach God's word. It's a big deal to me that I got to do it with two of my best friends, and so we're really appreciative to even get the opportunity to do it. So, I really appreciate the. I was gonna say Eric. No, I don't appreciate. No, we appreciate everybody at Kent, including Schultz and all of them. So
Yeah, definitely a thank you to Brian and Eric and the whole Kent Christian Church for having us.
yeah.
So
Well, I know Tanner, you've got a lot going on with the transitions and everything. I know you have a little bit of a break coming up. You want to tell us a little bit about that and what's happening in your life before we get started?
yeah, so this is kind of a continuation, I guess, of our young preacher's perspective segment, but I just wanted to speak for a moment where I'm coming from. I'm getting ready to go to Canada for a week on a fishing trip. So I'm excited about that. I leave Friday, um, and then I turn around and go on a mission trip. But I wanted to take a moment and just talk about um, how important rest is in ministry, because uh, I think number one, I've been warned and I've seen already in my young ministry preachers that are just worn out, that don't take the time to rest and think and invest in their own uh, stability and growth of their faith, and it really wears on them. And one of the things that we got told again and again in school was to take time to rest. Whether it's a day in the week that you take away, or trips away. These rallies are good to do that. A vacation trip is a good way to do that. I always try to make sure that I have one day that I just spend at home with my family during the week. But yeah, I'm going on this trip. I think, um, and we actually might talk about this a little bit in our text today. But I think the while we don't hold to the whole Mosaic law, like each and every single 600 and some laws, I think the Sabbath um, is an interesting thing for us to consider, and that we shouldn't write off just because it's an Old Testament law. The concept of the Sabbath and the day of rest has been around since creation, and I think that concept of rest is more than just a law in in the Mosaic law. It's maybe a creation thing that we should consider, in that we need rest. We see that Jesus needed rest, um, and the Sabbath is more than just taking a load off, napping, and watching the football game on Sunday afternoon, like a lot of people think it is. The Sabbath is more actually about, and we see this in the Old Testament, it's more about taking time to focus on the Lord and remove ourselves from everything else that's going on, and just really focus our mind on God and being thankful to him for all that he's given us. And I think we don't value that enough, and what how that actually gives us rest. So that's all I wanted to share. That's what I'm going to strive to be doing as I take this trip. So
Oh, that's good.
Remind me again what you're going to be fishing for up in Canada.
mainly walleye, but there's also pike and perch.
Nice. That'll be so
So
much fun.
yeah, I'm hoping I catch at least one of each, just because those are all three species that I've never caught before.
Yeah,
Me either. That's
and
cool.
I'm expecting and hoping for pictures
Oh yeah,
of the body of water that you're fishing. I just want to see what the view is like, and then hopefully when you catch one, you can send it to me too.
I'll send you the body of water, the catch, the dinner plate.
Oh yeah, You all? Jim has been going up there a long time. Do they have some like favorite food spots? I don't know if Canada is like known for any kind of
No, no,
certain.
no, no. There will be no traveling away. There will be an abundant amount of fish being eaten.
Like they're cooking
Oh,
it.
you mean you're gonna catch them and then eat them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you. I understand now.
They catch enough up there to where they pretty much eat fish every night.
So have they like perfected the way they cook each of the different kinds of fish?
Uh, they pretty much just fry the walleye up. The walleye is like the best, one of the best, if not the best, freshwater fish to eat. So,
Do they do any tartar sauce or ketchup or just all on its own? They make any kind of
pr- I think they just eat it how it is.
how it is? Cool.
I mean, I might grab me a bottle of ketchup. I'm one of those guys that eats fried fish with ketchup, but I know
Dude,
that's considered weird. But hot
I'm a
sauce sounds good. I could do some hot sauce. I'm not a
hot.
huge tartar sauce guy.
With freshwater fish, I always do hot sauce, but that's what I grew up doing.
That would probably cover up. That would probably be good with catfish because catfish got that little bit of fishy taste to it, and
Ducking and
hot
losing.
sauce would cover that up. That'd be
Yeah, you
good.
don't taste it anymore.
All right, well, let's hop in here to John chapter 5. I'm going to turn around here and grab my Bible. I placed it behind me on for some reason. But well, we just wrapped up chapter 4, and we're hopping in here to chapter 5. I do have sort of a verse 1 today, if you're ready for it.
Yeah, we're
Let's hear
ready.
it.
All right. Chapter 5 of John, verse 1, it says, "After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem." Um, I think a lot of times we read phrases like that and we just move past them real quick. But I think there's a couple of things to remember here. One, Jesus was um, a Jew. He was a Jewish man. He by um, oh man, genetics. He was. I don't even know how else to say this right now. My mind is just blanking.
Yeah,
Um,
but
heritage. That's what
yeah,
I was looking for.
there it goes.
That's
Yeah,
the word. He
um,
was Jewish by heritage, but also it wasn't just heritage for him. For two reasons. One, he loved the Father, meaning God the Father, and two, um, his whole part of his mission was to live a perfect life. And so this was more than just um, a tradition for him. It was more than just merely heritage, but it was love for the Father and obedience to the law, for the perfect purpose of being the sacrificial lamb on the cross. And so while sometimes we read verses like that and we just want to run past them, it's kind of important for us to pay attention to those things because this was one of those feasts that the Jews were supposed to observe, and he made certain to be there for it. So that's kind of our verse 1. Um, and then I'm actually going to move. It talks about he comes into Jerusalem. He goes to this pool called Bethesda, and he comes by this area where all of these people are lame and blind and sick, and he finds a man. He comes across a man that's been ill for 38 years. That is longer than I've been alive, and that is a really long time to think about.
Longer than we've been alive and then some too, a little bit.
Yeah, I I think it's important for us to just sometimes put ourselves in the feet of people in the scriptures, um, especially Jesus, but also from different perspectives. And it's just that's a wild thing to think about. Another thing to think about this with verse 5 saying a man was there who had been ill for 38 years is this man was known. Like anybody that went around there, people knew this guy. This wasn't what's getting ready to happen with Jesus healing him. This wasn't a scam. It wasn't a setup. This guy hadn't been sitting there for 38 years. Um, because Jesus told him to sit there for 38 years. That's not how this worked. But God did use this to make a point through this miracle, and that's really important. So the next thing I would ask, and I'm going to ask you guys, is in verse 6, Jesus says, "Do you wish to get well?" to this man. Why would he ask that?
Why would he ask that?
Seems like an easy question, doesn't it? You've been sick for 38 years. Do you want to get well? Well, of course. So, I mean, what kind of question is that? I don't know.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Okay, I love this. I love that Jesus knew the answer, and then he even knew the motives of the man. That guy was there to get well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he asked, do you wish to get well? Well, the answer is, well, absolutely. And it's not just he wants to get well, it's the fact is he's there to get well, but he can't. I want to read verse 7. It says, "A sick man answers, 'Sir, I have no man to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps before me.'" So he's saying is, I'm here at this pool. I'm sitting down. I can't move. And every time that it stirs, no one brings me to there. So there's no way I could be healed. And then Jesus asks, well, hey, do you want to get well? And so the guy might be thinking, well, is this man going to pick me up and bring me to this pool? Is probably what the beggar is thinking, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and the thing that came across my mind is, are we not asked the same question when it comes to our sin? Do you want to get well? Because at the end of the day, we have a choice to put our faith in Jesus or not to. And where every person on the planet is faced with the choice of, do we want to get well or not? And I think that's really interesting to think about. This guy wanted to get well. And how many people are faced with that choice but don't choose yes? They want to stay in their sin.
Because not everyone wants to get well.
Yeah.
I think it's part of it. Some people understand. I really do believe this. Some people understand their sin, the consequences of their sin. They understand the basics of the gospel, but they don't want to pick up their cross and deny themselves daily, and they don't want to repent. They don't want to live the Christian life. And so maybe that is more of a valid question than we've given it credit for. Do you want to get well? I think some people don't. Has been my experience with talking to people.
Yeah. I don't know how much more I can get into it right now, but as I was reading the text, that's what I thought about. And so I just want to encourage you guys, and I'm going to continue to just think about that question for myself. Do I really want to get well? Obviously, I'm in Christ. I've been forgiven of my sins, but there are things that I still need to work on in my Christian life. There are things that I will still come across for the rest of my life in the scriptures that I realize, oh, I've not been living right and I need to change. And every time we're faced with that question, do I want to get well, or am I going to reject the grace that Jesus offers? I think that's important to ask. So I just thought that was really cool.
And there's something else that I want to point out too. Tanner, you talked about phrases that we just skip right past. But the beginning of verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there. And I think this is something we can point out as we go through the Gospel of John. Whenever Jesus sees someone sick, lame, blind, in need of healing, the scriptures always say Jesus saw him, or some variation of that. And I think it's important that we try our best to see people that are in need, because later on, here in verse 7, it says, "The sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me.'" And so we get the idea that some people saw him, he was there, but they wouldn't help him get into that healing water. They would just step down over him, look past him. They obviously knew that they knew him, right? He was there 38 years. Or maybe he wasn't at that pool for 38 years, but he was unable to walk, or he was diseased for 38 years. Sorry. And so he was known as that guy with the illness, with the disease. He was known as a sick guy, and people saw him, but they just walked past him and didn't try to help him. But that's not how Jesus was. It says Jesus saw him and then ended up asking that question, do you wish to get well? And Jesus ends up helping him. And I think that's just a reminder for us to have our eyes open, to be on the lookout of people that need help. Both maybe they need help with physical conditions, or they need help, more importantly, with spiritual conditions, so that we don't just look past people and step over them when they're there wanting and desiring help. And we have the answer in the gospel, but we don't always ask that question if they want help.
Yeah. And another thing interesting here is there's always an element of faith to these situations. Because another question I had from this is, when Jesus says, get up, pick up your pallet and walk in verse 8, what if the guy didn't get up because he didn't trust what Jesus was telling him to do?
Yeah, right. I have never walked. I'm not moving my toes. Can't do it.
But how often, in the same thing with putting our faith in Jesus to receive the forgiveness of sins, how often do people do that? They're like, nah, there's no way that, if they can get to the fact that they are a sinner, then there are some people that are like, there's no way that this is how this works. But we could sit here and go through what Jesus tells us we're supposed to do. We've done that before, but how often do people say, nah, I don't trust that? And it's
Too bad, yeah.
But this doesn't say that this man sat there and argued with him. It says immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk. And so part of me just wonders, you know.
And I want us to think, and I don't want to cut you off, Jacob. I think this is super cool that, like, you vision this pool, you vision there's a lot of people there that they all knew him, and they didn't help him. And if you see a man who can't walk, what are you gonna do? Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. You're going to get excited. You're going to go run with him. You're going to teach him how to skip, which I just think would be hilarious to see someone that tries to skip for, I don't know. But yeah, so you would do all these things with him. But you look in the next couple verses, and that's not what happened. And I think that's really interesting, that our first thought would be, you celebrate, but the first thought of the Pharisees or the Jews there were to question what was happening. I think it's cool.
And another thing with this miracle is, I every time I see this, every time I see Jesus's miracles of where he heals somebody, I always think about the life-giving attribute that he had. That is only something that God is capable of. And he takes a man that's been like this for 38 years and gives him life. And all of these miracles of healing lead me to think about that power of life that he had, which only God can have. But then it says that it was on the Sabbath, and this is why I brought up earlier that we would maybe talk about what the Sabbath is, which we kind of did that before. And the question arises from the Pharisees' perspective: was this a sin?
And they didn't ask Jesus. They said this to the man who was cured, which I think, man, the audacity. This guy can't walk. He's walking. And the first thing you do, it is the Sabbath. Is it punishable for you to carry your pallet? They didn't ask him, Uh, and this is crazy. They didn't ask him like, "Oh, we're so happy you can walk." They didn't ask him, "Oh man, how are you doing?" They said, "Can you carry your pallet that you've sat on for 38 years?" Man, that's crazy.
They didn't even ask him if he knew. Like they didn't even ask him if he knew better. They just
It was the
even
point.
if that was like I'm gonna add this that was something that as Pharisees they added to the Sabbath keeping, but even if it wasn't, like maybe he didn't even know. Like they just said, "What in the world are you doing?"
And I just think about the mind of that guy, and he's like, "Whew, I just walked." And he responded and he said, "He who made me well was the one who said, 'Pick up your pallet and walk.'" I love he said, "Well, not me." The guy who healed me, he told me to pick up my pallet. And I just love that. And they respond, "Well, who is that who told you to pick up your pallet and walk?" They ignore the fact that they healed him for walking. All they said was, "Who told you to pick up that pallet?" Which, and it just reminds me of sometimes we get so distracted from little things like that.
Well,
That
it's also like this guy's kind of saying, "Who are you? Who do you want me to listen to? The guy that healed me, or you guys?"
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely an interesting interaction there. But then, I think a big thing here for us to think about is how the Pharisees seem to try to always add burden to to obeying God, and in them adding burden, they lost the intent of heart that they were supposed to have. Um, and we actually heard either part of a message or a whole message at the rally about how we can be very pharisaical sometimes, legalistic sometimes, in what we expect people to know or be. I believe it's Dave Jones actually from for his first Thessalonians sermon that he preached, where he talked about how sometimes in the Church of Christ we have this box that the box, maybe the planks in the center part are made up of sound doctrine, but then the box is held together by nails and screws of opinion and tradition,
Mhm.
and and sometimes we make those nails and screws of opinion and tradition um, a thing of unity. Like we try and make those things necessary for unity among people, but that's not biblical. Um, so uh, that's kind of what the Pharisees would do is they had this box of doctrine, but also opinions and traditions, and they would try to force that on people for and that they felt that that was the only way you could really serve God or obey God and have unity with that person, and that's just wrong.
Yeah. And I love that, like, I love that it says they like parted ways. And then in verse 14, it says Jesus found him in the temple. And that's the idea. Jesus was looking for him. And I bet he was pretty easy to find. I'm sure he was jumping and running, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I know I would. And I want us to see Jesus didn't just heal him. He didn't just fix, I like to think that that's just the symptom of the problem. He having physical ailments isn't, it's a problem for our well-being, but it's not a problem of eternity. And Jesus, he always points to, to the eternal things. And so he comes back to him and says, "Behold, you have become well." That's awesome. Then he says something even better. He says, "Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse happens to you." Well, we know what that worse is. It's not just not being able to walk. That worse is eternal separation from it, from a holy God. So he
Yeah.
says, "Sin no more. go run, go jump, be happy, do all those good stuff, but turn away from your sin because of what you've seen. And I think that's really cool that Jesus, he always points to the eternal. That's not why Jesus came on this earth, is to heal the sick and the blind. He came to seek and save which is lost, and we're lost because of our sin. And so Jesus says, turn away. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And well, I kind of mentioned the question earlier: was this sin, him healing on the Sabbath, and also this man walking? But specifically
That's right.
the healing, and Jesus actually answers the question in verse 17. It says he answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I myself am working."
Yeah.
And uh, he does only the will of the Father, and the Father is the one that instituted the Sabbath day. And really, we're going to see the extension of this answer next time, as we look at the end of the rest of chapter 5. But I would encourage everybody to just think about the fact that Jesus says, "My Father is working until now, and I myself am working."
And I love this, that they're accusing and even says persecuting Jesus. In verse 15 it says that this man told the Jews that it was Jesus who made him well, and because of this they were persecuting him and telling him he was healing and sinning and all these things. And so they're telling Jesus, you are sinning for working and healing on the Sabbath. And his answer wasn't, oh no, I'm not. He said, it is God who's working. And so what Jesus just said is, you just said that God broke his own institution, which was Sabbath, which he cannot do. And so I could just feel the frustration of the Jews, because they want to really get him. And then he says, you just said that the Father, who is the one who has the power to heal, is the one that through the Father I can do this, um, is the reason this man walks. And I just think that's so cool that my Father's working and I myself am working. And I think that's just like a mic drop kind of moment, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Well, that's the end of it today, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're going to go verses 18 through the end of chapter 47 next week, and maybe answer some more of those questions. But yeah, I think that's where we're going to end off today.
Not next week. We're
Oh,
gonna we're
yeah.
gonna be we're gonna take a 2-week break because I'll be in Canada without service. So
Canadian.
unless the Jacobs wanted to do one, which
We would never continue this without you, Daniel.
and then I will be on a mission trip the week after I get back from Canada. So 2 weeks where I'm not available, but then we'll get back the second week of July, to the second half of chapter 5. I dropped the ball and didn't remind somebody of song of the week, but I'm
I've
pretty
got one.
sure. Oh, fantastic! He's on top of his game. Let's go.
That you act so surprised.
I am, but
Okay,
it,
well,
but
we'll move past that.
not because you're a slacker or anything. I just am excited about it.
Well, good. Well, Jacob Cabe. He's always been the hymn guy, but last time he didn't do a hymn, so I thought I'd. Why are you shaking your head? No.
You're stealing my thunder. Are you doing a hymn?
Hey, this isn't the first hymn that I've put on there for the record, but since he didn't do a hymn last week, I thought I'd represent our. How do I want to be careful how I say this? Let's just say I wanted to make sure we had another hymn on there sometime soon. We'll leave it at that. But anyways, just a classic. I'm certain if you have darkened the doors of a church building one time, you've heard this hymn, "How Great Thou Art." Uh, and I love the creation aspect of it.
Yeah.
Talking about God, our Creator. And so the lyric that I'll plug for my favorite in the song. Let me find it here. I've got it pulled up on my phone. I don't want to misquote it. Um, O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. And specifically that last line about how God's power is displayed through the creation of the universe just connects so beautifully with Romans 1, with several of the Psalms that I don't have committed to memory, but that talk about God's creation power, and how we can learn a lot about who God is through the creation. I've always enjoyed that song. Singing that song or listening to it when you're on a scenic drive is an underrated aspect of it for me. I really like that aspect about it. So, How Great Thou Art, song of the week.
Are you gonna get on there and add your favorite version of it?
I will. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's too much of a difference between some of the different versions. So
Well, a quick
look.
search and there's like 15. So
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of the most popular hymns, so people have redone it a bunch. So I'll have to listen to a few of them and pick out one that I like, and I'll have it on there
and,
before the day's over with.
and I have to admit something, and I believe that we actually talked about this something like a year ago.
Oh,
But
wow.
for a long, long time, I thought that the phrase "How great thou art" was referring to God's creation, not Old English "How great thou art."
Like how great you are.
Yeah, so I, for a long, long time, just thought that the song was talking about how beautiful and magnificent God's power and his ability to create and how beautiful it was, and that phrase meant how great thou art, as in
Like an
his
artist.
art, his design. Yeah. Uh, until about a year ago.
Until a year ago?
Until about a year ago.
Oh
Oh,
man,
wow.
Um,
we need somebody.
and honestly, I like my version better.
How great thou art.
Yeah, but it is an excellent song, and I do love it a lot. It's very good, wonderful praise song.
That's it. Man, we don't have any other segments left.
I don't think so. Hillsborough Family Camp is coming quickly, just about a month away. So I would encourage anybody listening to maybe look at that and maybe see if you can come at least a couple days. But it's going to be another one of those events with good preaching, and it's something for the whole family. So we encourage you to come out to that. And thank you guys for listening. As always, go check out Songs of the Week, Heavy Branches Songs of the Week on Spotify. And as always, go bear fruit and so prove to be one of Jesus' disciples.